The details of the relief demonstrate a marked taste for popular style. Beside it, there is another relief dominated by the image of a large crane, recalling the construction of the tomb. This image also serves as an allusion to the probable source of wealth of the Haterii, who were owners of a construction company. This feature is found in the most famous relief work on the tomb, on the frieze depicting some of the most important monuments to have been built at the end of the 1st century AD, which are seen standing side by side with accompanying captions. Among them are the Colosseum and the Arch of Titus in the Forum. We may assume that the Haterii construction company participated in some manner in the building of these monuments. The same taste for realistic representation, full of life and detail, is to be found in the relief where a deceased couple are represented as watching chariot races in the circus, the stadium with its oval-shaped track on which the races were held. The delicate balance between the powers of the Senate and those of the emperor achieved by Augustus's reforms was to collapse. In AD 68, the Emperor Nero was forced to commit suicide, and within a single year there was a succession of 4 emperors, a sign of the bitter struggle between the Senate and the armies. At the end of this convulsed period, the general who was besieging Jerusalem, Vespasian, took power and arrived in Rome. This event is celebrated in the monumental bas-relief known as the Chancery, a name derived from the Roman building near which it was discovered. Here, the emperor is represented during his solemn entrance to the city. He advances surrounded by lictors, the officials who carried bundles of rods and an axe symbolizing supreme military power. He is welcomed in front of a personification of Rome by the Vestals, the priestesses who tended the fire of Vesta, one of the chief goddess protectresses of the fatherland. Flavius Vespasian and his sons Titus and Domitian, who were to take over the rule of the empire after him, were the architects of important administrative and social reforms that had a direct bearing on Italy. These emperors also promoted intensive building activities in the capital, a necessary step after the massive damage wrought by the Great Fire that had destroyed the city under Nero. They constructed buildings for public use, such as the Flavian Amphitheater, universally known as the Colosseum. On the Palatine Hill, a new imperial residence was built, famous for its sumptuous wealth, its reception halls, its gardens, and for the monumental perspective that it presented to the valley of the Circus Maximus. At the foot of the hill stands a triumphal arch celebrating the victory of Titus in Palestine and the conquest of Jerusalem. There was also a grandiose program of urban renewal in the area around the Campus Martius, the only part of which has survived to the present day is the large elongated area of the Domitian Stadium, today's Piazza Navona. At the beginning of the 2nd century AD, under the Emperor Trajan, the Roman Empire arrived at its maximum point of territorial expansion, but also at a cultural maturity that permitted the expression of an entirely original form of art. The masterpiece and symbol of this achievement is the celebrated Trajan's Column, encircled by a lengthy bas-relief recounting the victorious campaigns of the emperor against the Dacians, a people inhabiting what is now modern-day Romania. Although anonymous, the artist of this work is recognized as one of the greatest geniuses of the Roman world. The column stands in the center of the monumental complex of Trajan's Forum, which included 2 libraries, the Basilica, the large enclosed central plaza, and, after the death and subsequent deification of the emperor, the temple dedicated to him. The ashes of the emperor were deposited in a chamber that was inserted in the interior of the column plinth. The imposing complex of the Forum and Trajan's markets continued to evoke admiration in the Middle Ages and was considered one of the architectural wonders of Rome. Even today, its ruins are one of the most spectacular testimonies to the history of the city. Under the Emperor Hadrian, a Spaniard like his predecessor Trajan, the empire reached full institutional and cultural maturity. The administrative system, covering an immense territory, the integration within the empire of very diverse peoples and cultures, the network of communications and defense all reached their pinnacle of development. The empire himself traveled throughout the provinces of the empire and ordered his architects to capture the memory of these voyages in buildings placed in his immense villa near Tivoli. A distant echo of the extraordinary wealth of decoration in this enormous complex of buildings is evidenced in remains of the floor mosaics which decorated the buildings. The tiny pictures composed of minute tiles were often copied from original famous paintings and sought to emulate their effect. The highest and most perfect expression of Roman architecture, the Pantheon, also belongs to the Hadrian period. A temple dedicated to all the gods, the Pantheon was rebuilt by this emperor in the Campus Martius, replacing an earlier building from the Augustan period. The temple has survived almost intact to the present day, thanks to its transformation into a Christian basilica dedicated to the Virgin. Still today, the imposing mausoleum of Hadrian is an integral part of the panorama of Rome. The heavy-set castle rising on the banks of the Tiber is situated in front of a bridge that the emperor had built to connect it to the other bank. The popes converted the tomb into a fortress and transported the gilded bronze peacocks symbolizing immortality, which used to decorate the perimeter of the mausoleum, into the atrium of the medieval Basilica of St. Peter.